The Gloriana Set by ThebeMoon, read by Ella Max Mabella. Chapter 11. Hangover. Hermione was on a broomstick, flying higher than she ever had before, over the Black Lake, but she wasn't scared. The broom soared, and she wasn't controlling it. She was only a passenger. There was a solid warmth behind her, and she felt safe. "Hermione," said a voice, low and urgent. "Hermione." She opened her eyes. She was spread-eagled on her bed, lying on her stomach, still in her skirt and gold halter top. Parvati was shaking her. "Hermione!" She sat up. "What time is it?" 7 a.m., Hermione. You have to come downstairs. Now." "Why? Is Madame Hooch angry? And how the common room's a mess." "You have to see." Parvati straightened. "And bring your wand." Hermione's brain snapped to attention at that. Parvati's face was serious, and she was wearing her jogging shorts and sports bra. Her housemaid must have gone downstairs for her morning jog, the Patios were fitness freaks, and seen something. Hermione slid out of her bed, picked up her wand, and shoved her feet into fuzzy blue slippers. Ginny lay unmoving in her bed, still in her own party clothes. Lavender's bed was empty. "Okay," Hermione said, "let's go." They descended the staircase to the common room, flooded with morning sunlight that dazzled her bloodshot eyes and glinted off half-empty glasses and bottles. "There," Parvati said, pointing to the wall to the right of the portrait hole. Hermione nearly fell off the last step, her mouth open. On the wall, in letters 2 feet high, were the dripping, rust-colored words, "Die, mudbloods." Hermione felt like she had been hexed, but was too shocked to feel anything. She almost dropped her wand, her hands trembled so badly. "Who did this?" she breathed. "Slytherins, of course," Parvati said, her voice dripping with venom. "We don't know that." "We don't?" Parvati turned and stared at her. "We invite Slytherins to our common room for the first time in Hogwarts history, give them a password. Then, the next moment, we get that on our common room wall?" Hermione drew closer to the wall, dripping rust-colored letters. "Blood," she said softly. "These letters are written in blood." "Godric help us," Parvati whispered. "Whose blood?" "No way to tell," Hermione said. "Or was there?" "Should we raise it?" Parvati raised her wand. "No," Hermione said. "There could be a Magaborn out there. Hurt." She rubbed her forehead and tried to think past the pounding. "Parvati, please go get McGonagall. Then Madame Hooch. We need all the heads of houses." "Slytherin, too?" Hermione nodded. "Slytherin, especially." Parvati gave her a sideways glance, then ran out the portrait hole, glad to have something to do. Looking around her and sure she was alone in the common room, Hermione transfigured an empty butterbeer bottle into a potion vial. She approached the wall, nearly touching the last D in mudblood with her wand. She waved the wand slightly, and a long drip stretching from the bottom of the D to the floor flew off the wall and into her vial, which filled with red blood. "Now what?" Hermione spotted her beaded back underneath the sofa she had dozed on last night, where she lay well, Malfoy. No, it wasn't him. It wasn't. Shaking her head to clear it, Hermione summoned the bag with her wand and tucked the vial inside. She had just slung the chain strap over her shoulder when McGonagall charged through the portrait hole, wearing a dressing gown and her black hat, wand held high. "What's the danger? Are ye—" The headmistress broke off when she saw Hermione, who was suddenly aware of her wrinkled clothes, crazy hair, and fluffy blue slippers. Hermione pointed at the wall. McGonagall gasped. "Is anyone hurt?" "I don't know," Hermione said. "We need all the heads of houses to check on their students." "Yes," McGonagall said, stepping closer to the letters. "Blood, of course." The portrait hole swung open, revealing Madame Hooch, looking grim, dressed in her usual jersey and leathers. Early morning flight, or let the woman sleep in Quidditch gear. "What is all this?" Madame Hooch snapped, stepping in, followed by Parvati. "The state of this?" The head of house trailed off as her eyes fell on the letters. "Miss Patil, please stand outside the portrait hole. Let no one but the heads of houses in." Parvati nodded and left. "Madame Hooch," McGonagall went on, "I need you to account for all your students." She glanced at the bloody letters. "Especially the Muggleborns. If any students is missing, inform me immediately." Madame Hooch nodded and dashed up the boys' stairs. The portrait hole opened again to admit Slughorn, and behind him Flitwick, the Ravenclaw head, and Professor Sprout. Flitwick and Sprout gave gasps of shock and dismay at seeing the letters, but Slughorn just shook his head sadly, his moustache drooping. His eyes met Hermione's, and they were full of pain. McGonagall instructed them to count their students, then report back immediately any missing or injured children.
Have prefects keep the students in their dorms and common rooms. Everyone is to stay in their house until further notice.
The three heads nodded and left, although Sprout and Flitwick each gave Slughorn a quick, sober look.
Miss Patil, please stand guard by the wall. No one but myself is to touch the letters.
McGonagall turned to Hermione.
Miss Granger, come with me.
Hermione clutched her beaded bag grimly as she followed McGonagall out of the portrait hall.
Adolina,
McGonagall said to the portrait outside. Hermione started. She had never heard the fat lady's name.
Tell me, who was the last person to exit the Gryffindor common room last night?
The fat lady obviously didn't know what had happened, but she was wide-eyed from watching the activity and shivered at McGonagall's tone.
Adolina,
the headmistress repeated.
Who was the last person to leave the common room?
Draco Malfoy,
the fat lady said.
Draco Malfoy,
McGonagall repeated.
Yes, the portrait said. 10 minutes after midnight. Woke me up, he did.
How did he look?
McGonagall asked.
Very nice,
the fat lady said.
Such pretty hair, and his clothes are never mussed.
His expression, Adolina,
the headmistress snapped.
Any sign of his feelings? General thoughts?
He seemed happy,
the fat lady said.
He thanked me very nicely.
McGonagall and Hermione both stared in astonishment.
You are certain it was Mr. Malfoy?
Yes, quite sure. Granted, I haven't seen him often, but occasionally I visit a snake charmer portrait in the dungeons.
And Mr. Malfoy was happy?
McGonagall said in disbelief.
What kind of happy?
It took all of Hermione's self-control not to fidget, and she couldn't decide which kind of Malfoy happy she preferred to hear about at that moment.
It was a lovely smile,
the fat lady sighed.
So sweet and open.
Did anyone enter the common room after Malfoy left? Hermione asked quickly.
No, dear,
the portrait said.
Until the headmistress arrived, of course.
Thank you, Adolina.
McGonagall re-entered the common room, closely followed by Hermione. Parvati was shooing a couple of early rising first years away from the wall.
Miss Granger,
the headmistress said quietly.
Do you know if anyone was with Mr. Malfoy before he left the common room?
Hermione took a deep breath. Here goes nothing. I was with him. McGonagall didn't look surprised.
Was there anyone else in the common room?
No, she said. A few students entered through the portrait hall while we were talking, but they went straight to bed. McGonagall paused a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was careful.
Please, tell me what happened.
We were just talking, Hermione said, which was true, except for the time she spent napping. He probably could have written 20 blood messages during that time. He also could have hexed her or hurt her, but he didn't. What did he do then? Just drink siren scotch and watch me sleep? She shifted uncomfortably.
Miss Granger?
Hermione started. The headmistress was speaking, and she hadn't heard a word. Sorry? McGonagall's lips thinned.
I asked, Miss Granger, what you were speaking about with Mr. Malfoy.
Another deep breath. We were talking about Quidditch. McGonagall's eyebrows shot up.
Quidditch?
He was just no Slytherin seeker, you see, and we talked about ancient runes, which was also true enough.
Anything else?
Potions, Hermione said calmly, having mastered her nerves finally. McGonagall nodded.
Yes, I've heard about you and Mr. Malfoy. Impressive performance in potions. What then?
Then I escorted him out of the portrait hall and went to bed. The headmistress looked at her thoughtfully, 1,000 questions behind her spectacle-rimmed eyes, but she only asked,
Is there anything else I should know, Miss Granger?
Hermione fidgeted with the chain of her bag. She had to tell McGonagall. The woman probably already knew. There was a confrontation last night between Malfoy and Dennis Creevey. McGonagall's eyes sharpened.
Go on.
Ron started it, really. Malfoy made a cheeky comment about, well, it was a cheeky comment, and Ron tried to punch him.
A fairly common impulse around Mr. Malfoy, I wager.
You have no idea.
Marigold, my darling.
Both McGonagall and Hermione jumped at the littling voice. Blueberry fluttered a few feet above the carpeted floor, her sweet face wreathed in smiles. She flew over and gave McGonagall a light kiss on both cheeks. Apparently the Dada teacher hadn't been fibbing about her friends of the fairies. The fairy eyed the giant blood-soaked message with bright interest.
"Is this it? Lovely."
"Yes, Professor Bluebell," McGonagall said rather grumpily.
Bluebell waved her thin wand at the words.
"This is no simple message."
"Is it a curse? What kind of curse?" Hermione asked. The fairy tilted her hat to one side, and her intricate wand-work never slowed.
"Difficult to tell. Cast on the castle itself, responding to blood, manifesting in blood. Hate, certainly, but also love."
"Love," McGonagall repeated. She cut her eyes at Hermione, who shrugged slightly. "You hired her, Marigold."
"An ancient spell soaked in blood into the very walls,"
Bluebell said cheerfully, as if she was discussing the curtains. "That hardly sounds like love, Professor," Hermione said. Bluebell eyed her mischievously.
"Ah, and you are an expert in love, yes, Miss Granger?"
"Can you tell who cast this message?" McGonagall asked.
"No, but it was powerful magic, recently cast with powerful blood,"
Bluebell said.
"Must we seal the room?" McGonagall asked. "This is the only entrance to Gryffindor Tower."
The fairy shook her head, golden curls bouncing.
"I cannot tell the purpose, Marigold dear, but the letters themselves are not harmful."
"I don't like the younger students seeing this," McGonagall said, "but I can't destroy the evidence."
She waved her wand, and a red velvet curtain appeared, shrouding the wall. Bluebell was looking around the room.
"Some nice daisies would look well in here," she said. "Healing."
McGonagall drew Hermione aside as Bluebell chattered about flowers to a startled Parvati.
"You were saying, Miss Granger, that there was a confrontation between Mr. Weasley and Mr. Malfoy last night?"
"Yes, Ron threw a punch, Malfoy dodged it, and Dennis aimed a stunning spell straight at Malfoy," Hermione said. She shook her head. "It should have worked, but instead Dennis was thrown backwards into a wall." McGonagall drew a sharp breath.
"Was the boy injured?"
Hermione shook her head.
"Is it possible, Mr. Malfoy—"
"He didn't have his wand out," Hermione said quickly. The two women stood silent, thinking. Malfoy could have used wandless magic. His time as a Death Eater had doubtless left him with many advanced skills. Skills Hermione did not want to know about. "I don't think it was Malfoy," Hermione said finally. "He appeared honestly shocked when Dennis fell." McGonagall's face was expressionless.
"Thank you, Miss Granger."
She raised her voice.
"Professor Bluebell, would you be so kind to accompany me?"
The fairy immediately followed the headmistress through the portrait hall. Hermione shared a long look with Parvati, and the two young women wearily climbed the stairs again. McGonagall would question Malfoy now, of course. She hoped the man had the wit not to mention Hermione's nap. He probably knew better. If there was one thing Slytherins were good at, it was self-preservation. The library was rather empty for a Sunday afternoon. Typically, students packed the tables to catch up on homework, even so early in the term. But fear and speculation had swept the castle, and students were too busy spinning blood message theories about double-crossing Slytherins and Malfoy in particular. No students had been reported missing or injured, although a few endured painful talks with their heads of houses for being out of their assigned beds. The fat lady had obviously blabbed that Malfoy was the last person to leave the common room, which closed the case for most. Nearly everyone believed that he had written a message during the last hour of the party. The common room was darker then, and any remaining partiers were preoccupied. A few students remembered seeing Hermione talking to Malfoy as well, which prompted more speculation. How drunk was Hermione last night? Had Malfoy hexed her? None of the talk made her look particularly good, and Ron, plagued with a well-deserved hangover, had emerged to lecture Hermione in the common room until she threatened a bad boogie hex. Now she was sitting in the library, wearing jeans and a Weasley sweater, hair in a bushy ponytail, trying to remember if there had been anything suspicious about the wall the night before. The lights had been low, and she'd been... A series of dull thuds and flash of white blonde hair caught her attention. Malfoy, of course, hidden behind a shelf, pushing at books from his side so they'd fall to the floor near her table. Subtle. She put down her quill. It was dangerous for him to be out alone. A few students had banded together, she'd heard, vowing to rid the castle of that Malfoy menace. She slipped into the goblin history section and waited for him to follow. Few people read about goblins by choice. "You shouldn't be here," she said when he joined her. "I shouldn't be anywhere," he answered. She eyed him carefully. He looked fine, if a bit hollow-eyed. in a black t-shirt and grey trousers. "What did you tell McGonagall?" she asked. "That I didn't attack the weasel or that creepy boy." "Creepy?" Hermione snapped. "And that I spent the end of the party with you, chatting amicably about potions." He smirked. "Such dedicated students we are. I didn't mention the part where you lay snoring on the sofa." "I didn't snore," Hermione said indignantly. "And talking in your sleep." He closed his eyes. "Oh, Draco, Draco. I'm leaving now," she said. "No, wait, please." A long, smoothly muscled arm shot out to block her movement, the dark mark on his forearm suddenly before her eyes. Hermione stared at the mark wide-eyed, then turned to frown up at him. "Tell me," he said, "were you able to erase those words?" "Die mudbloods, Malfoy, that's what the letter said." Her voice was sharp. "The fear to say something increases the fear of the thing itself." "Very eloquent," he sneered. "Very Gryffindor. Quoting that muggle again." "Dumbledore said it." Malfoy's eyes took on a cold, distant look, and he withdrew his arms, backing away slightly. "I know what happened in the astronomy tower," Hermione said in a rush. "I know you didn't want to." "Dumbledore, Snape, my mother," he said bitterly, "all lining up to save my sorry ass, if not my soul. My pretty, pretty soul." Hermione said nothing. "I'm not sure they succeeded. No matter what you wrote in that letter," he went on, "I still let those Death Eaters in, Granger. Fenrir tainted the curse-breaking Weasley. The old fool died." Hermione held his gaze. "Yes, you did what you did. I happen to understand your reasons, but that doesn't change the fact. Are any of us so pure? Harry forced Dumbledore to drink poison. Ron abandoned us while we were on the run from Voldemort. I've set fire to a teacher, imprisoned a woman for writing lies, and disfigured a classmate. You think you're the only one who can be ruthless?" His eyes glittered. "How I would love to hear your stories." "You didn't hurt or kill those people, but you bear responsibility," she went on. "That's your debt to pay." "Then help me pay it," he said, surprisingly earnest. "It took the Golden Trio, an entire order, and half the school to bring down the dark Voldemort. And now somebody wants to start it all up again." Malfoy raised his arm, one hand on the shelf, again blocking her exit. He leaned into her. "Tell me what you're thinking," he said, his voice low. "What will McGonagall do? What are you planning?" "I won't say." "Tell me," he repeated softly, his lips very close to hers. "No," she said, just as softly. "I'll kiss you if you tell me, Granger." A tremor swept up her body, constricting her throat. "Reckless," her mind whispered. "You'll kiss me if I don't," she managed to whisper. He chuckled softly in his throat, his eyes hooded. "Clever girl." "Hermione!" Thea's voice carried clearly through the library. "Hermione, are you here?" Malfoy backed away again, lowering his arm and glaring in Thea's direction. Hermione drew in a much-needed gulp of air. "I'm not telling you anything," she said louder. He transferred his glare to her. "You think I would write that message? And no, I'm not saying that word, and that's final." "Hermione!" Thea's voice drew closer. "Don't play the victim, Malfoy," she snapped. "You tormented me and my friends for years. We've been talking civilly for a little more than a week, and you want me to betray McGonagall for you?" Malfoy just looked down at her, frowning. Hermione was reminded of the concerned look he'd given his mother in the entrance hall. "That message targeted," he began. "Hermione!" Theo entered the goblin section wearing a green jumper over brown trousers and a button-down shirt. Harry could use a few fashion tips from this wizard, Hermione thought. Maybe get him out of those god-awful sweatshirts. "Relax, Theo," Malfoy said. "Granger is perfectly safe. Between the two of you, I find her much scarier." Theo looked at him coldly. "You'd be surprised what little tricks I know." "Theo, I'm fine," Hermione said impatiently. "I need to study." She gave Malfoy a last doubtful look and stalked out of the goblin section. A new stack of books had appeared on her table. Theo's, most likely. She sat down and fussily sorted her papers, but every nerve ending in her body was tuned to the goblin section 3 shelves over. What did she expect? Blood-curdling screams? Shelves bursting into flames? They were probably just having a pissing contest over there. Nothing to concern herself with. Still, she was relieved when Theo re-emerged, disgruntled but unhexed. He fell gracefully into the chair opposite her. "You should stay away from him," he grumbled. "You should mind your own business," she said. "I told you I don't need another run in my life." He smiled. "Protectiveness is entirely lost on you, isn't it? How am I supposed to impress you? By treating me like an intelligent person and not a piece of ass." "Pretty harsh, Hermione," he said, his smile gone. She sighed. You're right. Malfoy seems to bring out the worst in everyone, including me. I want to be clear. His behaviour, those words on the walls, the rest of us Slytherins are not exactly cheering. I've been asked by my house to tell you that. Theo's green eyes were sharp, as if he was trying to bore his message into her skull. Blaise is furious. Slughorn has threatened us with expulsion if we do anything, or Malfoy would be in the infirmary right now. We don't know who did it, Theo, Hermione said. We have no proof Malfoy did. He was the last one in the common room, I heard. No, Theo, I was the last one in the common room. I saw him out of the common room. Theo didn't like that, she could tell. He opened his mouth to say something, but glanced at her and thought better of it. I am hoping you can help me study, he said somewhat formally. I have a week's worth of catching up to do. I would be happy to help, Theo, she answered, equally formal. His perfect smile flashed again. The man turned it on and off like a light bulb. It was unnerving. She had to press her lips together to keep from smiling back. Show me your schedule, was all she said. To be continued.
Thank you for listening to The Gloriana Set by ThebeMoon, read by LMX Mabella. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on AO3, YouTube or Spotify.